Here we go. It is Tuesday, and I'm recording this in the morning, but we'll be sharing it in the evening. And just want to talk about tools, tools that I love. Those tools that when you start to work with them, they feel like a warm hug, and those things that empower us to do the work that we want to do, as opposed to the things that we have to work around to get to where we need to get to. So I just discovered Bean Jobs this morning. Resumes have always been like an Achilles heel. I've Phil Gornai, who's one of my dear friends right now, wrote my first resume in before the year 2000, and I've done derivatives of that ever since then. And but yeah, so I've never enjoyed that process, and it's kept me from like just kind of being able to celebrate the work that's actually been done. So inside of that, I was like, what are some of those tools that are the closest to, as they call it, that warm hug? Like once you work with them, you feel safe, you feel empowered, you feel creative to be able to work with. And I have sensitivities towards tools that don't necessarily work in a great way. And 99% of the stuff that I work with in the corporate world is that, right? You have to kind of overcome. You have to overcome with one exception. Slido is the one exception inside the corporate world that I always feel like happy going into, and I feel great going into. Now the Office 365 suite of tools almost get you there. It's being able to have those tools work together in a system. It almost gets you there, but there's just little things that always kind of are a hiccup to start to work. It's like the network effect of all the tools working together are absolutely great. But that's not necessarily what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the what I use on a regular basis to start to make things work. So let's go through it right here. So now, number one, I've started over the last couple of weeks using StreamYard to do live streams. And I like doing stuff live because to compensate for the fact that I hate doing editing on the back end. And so when you do something live, it feels more organic, but it also compensates for the fact that we don't have to do any editing on the back end. And what I found was, even when I created videos before and had to upload them later, even the process of having to upload a video after the fact, I would say over 50% of the things that I've actually created to get uploaded have never actually gotten uploaded. And it's not necessarily because they're good or they're not good. It's just because, hey, we move on. Like as soon as I'm done with this recording, I'll move on to something else and start to work on something else, and it doesn't get done. And so lives also doesn't allow you to do those multiple takes. I found with most people, and I'm assuming this is myself as well, we're the worst judges of the stuff that we actually create. And typically it errs on the side of, it errs on both sides. When I think something is absolutely amazing, it doesn't necessarily resonate. And when I think something is usually mediocre a lot of times, 90% of the time it is, but that other strong portion of the time, you're always surprised by, hey, wow, this actually resonated with people on the outside. So I have trained myself to not necessarily prejudge. So StreamYard allows me to go live. Don't love that it's a browser as opposed to an app. I'm much more of an app fan, but have had a great experience so far and have just created about 5 hours of streams over the last couple of weeks. Over the last couple of weeks. Another new one for me is Cleft Notes. That's CLEFT Notes. That is from Justin Mitchell and Johnny Cosgrove. I've known Justin since the Yak days, which was one of my favorite tools for the longest period of time. Just met Johnny last week, and but what Cleft Notes does is great. So for those of us who feel like we're all over the place with the stuff that we talk about to create, what Cleft Notes does is it takes an audio note. It's a very elegant, I use the term the warm hug. It's a warm hug type solution to, it's a warm hugs type solution to be able to create a summarized note, which does a pretty good job of capturing the essence of what is of what we're working through and working with. So I love Clef Notes for being like, look, I've got a bunch of different thoughts. They're not going to make sense to communicate to another person. So how do I start to organize these so I can communicate them to another person? And that's where Clef Notes starts to go into that one. I mentioned Yak before. Yak and the whole space of asynchronous audio notes, I think, are my secret weapon. I have a conversation back and forth with my coach every single morning. He leaves me a note. He's on the West Coast. He leaves me a note. I leave him a note in the morning, and that's how I start to check in. And the nice piece of it is, again, I do that as I'm walking my dog, and yeah, it's very quick, and sometimes. So there's some technical difficulties and the note doesn't necessarily go through, but it's a very, we speak every single day, and the investment time for both of us, mine is about about 5 minutes worth of time. At the time that makes sense. I just have to get it in by noon Eastern time. At the time that it makes sense, he spends a little bit more because he's analyzing and doing some of the coaching, but I guess this is probably a 10-minute investment of time. And we've been able to speak every day because we don't have to schedule something. And so we have the flexibility to be able to send those notes back and forth. Also, I've shared a couple of times on here, if you've listened to any of these threads, Martin Messier was somebody I went to college with. We started on Voxer. We've been doing voice notes back and forth. I remember one time, we'll call it around 2014, Martin and I were we got on a live conversation together, but 99% of the stuff that we've done has been completely asynchronous it's been completely asynchronous. Okay, so what are some of the other tools? Otter.ai was, again, one that I discovered that was a huge leap for me, because prior to that, I had all of these audio notes that were going back and forth, but they were dependent on people actually listening to them. And the audio quality, not so great on a lot of those messages. So Otter starts getting a transcript, and immediately they had a word cloud. So you can start to get the essence of what's being talked about in the message in a visual way, to be able to trigger the memories of what we actually talk about. So I can look at a word cloud for something that I created in 2019, and remember, and I can bring me back to the moment and remember kind of the experience of what we were talking about. I don't necessarily make that sound like I just made, but so that has been a big one. And then with Otter.ai, able to get like summaries, and so we talked about those types of work, so you can start getting summaries of stuff that you're talking about. It's funny, the summaries don't necessarily, just in general, these summaries don't necessarily live up to the hype. I'm not saying the Otter specific, but like they don't quite capture the essence of what's going on yet. They might get there, but what's nice about those summaries, one, it does give us a summary for people who weren't there. But number two, what I like to do is like, what questions do these transcriptions start to solve? I will go next into, I'll call it my favoritist of the favorite tools. Gyroscope, because Gyroscope gives us the lens. It's my health tracking tool, and it's where my health coaches actually are, and it gives us the lens and how I think work will start to be done in the future. So what Gyroscope does, it sits on top of, and this is an oversimplification, but it sits on top of my Apple Watch data, and I get real-time feedback on the thing that is the most important to me, which is, and all of the rest of us, is health, right? So it gives us real-time feedback, and it was just like, so I feel like I play my health like a video game, as opposed to having to set up all these systems to manage the health before we actually get to the real work that we're able to do. They also have AI coaches that go along with with Gyroscope, and I have a human coach, again, that I send messages to every day through a chat. What's great about Loom is, and it does a lot of the same stuff that Otter does, but one, it has a video component to it, does some of the summaries, but the greatest thing about Loom, it solved the problem for me when I was starting to create videos on my iPhone, and they were too heavy. They were too, they were too big, and so it was a challenge to upload them. So Loom creates some lightweight videos. You can start creating them real time, but the nice thing that Loom does that none of the other tools do that I work with is it titles the videos for you. So it's like these little things for those of us that capture quite a bit. It's the little things that where we don't have to go back and do some editing on the back end that make all the difference in the world, that allow us stay in our normal flow of activities. And Loom allows for that type of work. And it's also where I'll start to where I start to create videos for my family. So I do something. I do a check-in with the family every single day. Typically, when we're on the same time zone, I'll send them an Apple voice note. But everybody's not so great about silencing their notifications. So my family's 6 hours behind me right now. So I'll send a Loom video and then just remind myself to send it to them when they wake up in the morning, when we're all in the same time zone, which we will be in the next couple of days. Then I just send them an Apple voice notes. What's great about Apple voice, not Apple voice notes, the Messenger voice notes, which I think is different than the Apple voice notes. Send them the Messenger voice notes on the back end. Now I've gone back and forth on task management and program management and project management. So the three tools are the four tools that are always in the mix for that. And there's not, I'm going to say my favorite one right now is Workflowy. And Workflow is just basically infinite nested lists. Because what that does is, the way that I like to work is starting off with a blank sheet of paper, but also not forgetting everything that happened in the past. So as I wake up in the morning, I like to capture and get everything out of my brain, which is great. It clears the brain. But then what that does is it starts to create an overwhelm on the number of things that you're able to work with. So Workflowy allows me to actually, put stuff out in the future. It allows me to, lock stuff into a closet very quickly, and then bring it out. So I can, when I'm in the flow and I can handle like a huge number of items, then I can expand out the list and see those. When I need it at a summarized level, I can do that. So Workflow is the best at taking us from like in the weeds working on items to the 10,000 foot level. Now, if we want to go a little bit more, Workflow is great for words. You can put images and other things and links in there, but it's not necessarily designed for that. If we want to start to creating relationships before the data and have the ultimate flexibility, Notion is the tool to be able to do that. The challenge with Notion is, it's like you can just get lost in it because it's so infinitely flexible. It allows you to go down rabbit holes that you don't necessarily need to go down, but it's great for starting to create relationships. And I'm always looking at like a relationship management tool, and you can start building out the tools that you need in Notion very quickly. My friend Martin Messier is doing that as well. Build out the tools you need in Notion, and then move to one of the like enterprise or other types of tools pretty quickly. As far as task management goes, there's two that I use, and none have really stuck very well. Number one is Todoist, and Todoist is great because it integrates with so many of the other tools. But the issue of overwhelm with having too much volume, like you have to always stay ahead of managing the task management pieces of it. And so I always feel like when I get to Todoist, it's great when everything's cleaned up and it's working and it's perfect. But when it's not getting actively managed at the time, it's not such a great option. Now, Things is a much better user experience. Again, when we start talking about that warm hug of apps, Things starts to do that. But the challenge is Things doesn't necessarily talk to other, doesn't necessarily talk to other tools. So I'm doing a lot of my task management right now inside of Workflowy as things are starting to move to some of the other places. And then frankly, I do, and The other one that I'll end with is the Moleskine notebooks. Um, which I've started to purchase to start taking notes. They feel great to start to write in. I just ordered another set of pens. I haven't found the right amount of pens. For me, I need inexpensive pens because I lose them quite a bit. That just feel great, and prefer blue ink that doesn't necessarily smudge. I got some pens that I just ordered that I think they're called Pilot. I can't remember the exact name of them. So those will be coming in Amazon today. But doing stuff inside of a notebook. Now notebooks are great when like everything's at peace and things aren't moving at 10,000 miles a minute. Notebooks are great for those times. However, yeah, they're great for those times. But when working in uh, like high velocity, doing a lot of work that doesn't necessarily speak to each other in the same way. Like how do you talk about managing a corporate with managing um, personal projects, with managing family time, with managing health, right? You need to have some electronic tools to start to make that work. I'm trying to think. I don't think I missed anything that is anything's major on that one, and I'm going to leave that one here. And then obviously. I will say the other two, the last two, for work, definitely chat. Teams chat can keep up with Teams chat almost all the time, and over email, and then text messages, definitely over email, messenger over email. So hope everybody's having an amazing day. Thanks a lot for listening to this brainstorm. We'll see what we can actually turn this into in the back end. Have an amazing one.